You're going to learn how to read hieroglyphs on your own. I'll send you other places to go learn, to watch a flick. I ain't going to mention the fucker's name, but it's in here. You're going to go. You're going to go look it up. I've got links to the guy. I would suggest only watching the videos I direct you to.
This video will be about field rotation, field of view rotation. If you're looking at, let's say, the sky, and you're looking at the moon is one of the few things in the sky that has features on it, so you can figure out the orientation of it. The sky, however, does not contain forced perspective orientation lines like this computer routine is doing. Because that is not in the sky, we have to use other stars and other objects, like planets, to figure out the orientation of the moon with reference to the rest of the universe. Now, this only works if you have an entire night that's completely clear, which isn't necessarily going to happen in your area, and may never have happened in your lifespan, depending on where you live. Next thing, this doesn't work if the sky is lit up by the sun. So there's only a few ideal days during the year and sequences of days you can use to confirm this. That's why we're using software here. Some of you may have lived in areas where you've never been able to see the moon and the stars clearly for enough time to be able to gain this perspective. Some of you, who may be watching this, have a vested interest in making sure that you never see any perspective on this subject. I'm not trying to be cruel, but some people on the internet, for various reasons, ideological, political, religious, whatever, have decided to espouse the idea that under no circumstances could they ever be wrong about their first impression about reality, and therefore everybody else is part of some giant conspiracy. And still others say those sorts of things, and some of you may genuinely believe them, but the fact is, they're just not telling you the truth. There are some people out there who try to make it seem like they're genuinely ignorant of something or just confused, and what they're doing is they're just trolling. I have to say this every once in a while, and I'm going to say it during this video. Please stop assuming that someone who's communicating with you over the internet that's being aggressive, abusive, or sarcastic or annoying to you, stop assuming they're not doing it on purpose. Some of them really are just doing it to do that. They have nothing better to do. That's it. And some need it desperately. Now we're going to look at the moon's orientation with respect to not the sky, which has an orientation towards the North Star, and that's why we should be using it. We're going to look at it with reference to the horizon. Now this is a time of year I'm going to call summer-ish. It's not really summer. And the moon is rising and also sits just slightly over to the left of what we would call southeast, and over here it'll come over here to southwest. And the moon, when it goes through this rising and setting on this arbitrary timing, we see in this orientation, if we're using just the horizon, that crater is on top. Okay, but we can also see, if you want to pay attention, even when we zoom out pretty good distance to where we get that kind of arrangement of lines, that we also have that star above it and a kind of sequence here. Now, this program is notorious for making it harder to view things depending on lighting level, even though that doesn't affect anything in space. So it may make it hard to find that. So I'll try to point out what we're seeing here. But suffices to say, the orientation of the moon looks like that from the perspective of the horizon. Now we're going to move it forward a notch. Now I'm going to move it forward just a teensy bit here, just to emphasize that the sky appears to be moving forward, right? And we can look at the moon and we can see that the arrangement of stars around it seems to stay pretty consistent, but instead of them pointing a certain way we would call up, arbitrarily almost, they seem to be pointing down. Now we're going to go over here and look and see where the crater ended up. The crater, of course, because it's kind of stuck to the sky as it's moving, we now have this the splotch right here, and we have the first perspective here saying that's north and that's south, and this is east and west going slashingly across our screen. But now this thing, instead of being pointed straight up, is pointed to the right. So it's moved, let's say, 90 degrees. Now, when we zoom out, you may have noticed that this is almost a 45-degree angle here. And then when we look over here, it's almost a 45-degree angle. Yeah, it's supposed to rotate. What we perceive as 90 degrees is simply because we are experiencing field of view rotation. We are viewing this seeming rotating thing, and we're using the perspective of the equator. I mean, not the equator, but the perspective of looking at the horizon. Now I'm going to change the months to make this much more emphasized. One moment, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oops, 6. Overshot. Now we have the moon way up in the sky. Depending on what time of year it is, you're going to have more of the sky visible for more of the day, or more accurately, more of the night. Now, of course, that's sunrise. The moon's up here. But we're going to just go ahead and look at it. Now we see a crescent moon. And let's see if I can get this on the screen properly. Fat chance. As you can see, the crescent moon is kind of tilted to the left. Now I'm going to back it up to where we can run it into the horizon. And we have to go way over. Number one, you'll notice it hits the horizon further north than it would normally. A lot further north. And when we look at the crescent moon, which is what most people want to use for an orientation for it instead of the craters, it seems to be bowl up. Okay? Now I'm going to zoom out, way out. See how crashy the computer gets from this. I'm going to run it forward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Almost 15. And I'm going to zoom in on the moon. Instead of it being bowl up, it's tilted not just a little bit over, but much further over. It's more than a 90-degree rotation during that time of the year. But that means the moon is tilting. No, because the reference point north to south hasn't changed reference into it. It really hasn't. Depending on what time of year it is and the angle you're looking at, you're going to see that the moon appears to tilt and wobble and do all sorts of things only because of our perspective. We have a limited view of the reality we're in, and when we learn things, we can gain a much more reality-based view of things. A much better job can be done, more knowledge can be had, and less confusion can be achieved by just having a little perspective. And that's this thing. These are first perspective lines. This is like making sure you don't get lost in the ocean by simply knowing which way north is. To heck with how straight it is, just north at all. So I hope this has been valuable and useful to you, and if it hasn't, you can go out and learn this yourself. Now remember, it requires that you have uninterrupted clear skies, day or night somehow, to be able to observe this effect. This is the equivalent to having a, let's say a hoop-shaped Quonset hut type building. You put a sign up on one wall, and then if you push it up the wall over to here, you seem surprised that it's turned upside down. No, it's just because you pushed it upside down by doing this. That's kind of how the sky works. Again, there are some people who need to have this be about an Earth that doesn't move, and an Earth that isn't round, and a sky that doesn't have the moon stuck to it. But you can go ahead and just observe the moon and observe the stars around it, figure out the orientation of them, and see if it did move with reference to the rest of the universe, instead of did it move with reference to your personal view of the world. If it didn't twist, rotate, or shift, or flop over, or whatever you want to call it, reference to the entire universe, for you to decide that what you observe is somehow unusual is based on your own perspective, and you make it dominant. Now I'm just going to go over and turn off our reference point, the equatorial grid, and now you can see the moon in this giant mess, by the way, actually centered over the Milky Way galaxy, which we're a part of. Unless you can keep track of these stars, or just take photos properly, you can't really discover this kind of stuff. People have done this for centuries and figured it out for you, though. So why not take advantage of them? Or you can look up some guy on YouTube literally flipping off the camera, screaming things, who calls himself Catfish Glass. That's the last name he had years ago, back in 2014. Basically, attention-seeking and calling people names and not offering us anything in return for the amount of harassment he needs to dish out. Now, I want to point out some people out there who don't believe the Earth does what it does, who might believe the Earth is flat, aren't like that. They are actually genuinely curious about the subject matter, but some people aren't. Some people are just trolling. You shouldn't assume everybody who says some specific thing is doing it honestly. Also, you shouldn't assume that they're bad people either. You also shouldn't assume, and this is very painful to say, that people that you agree with are being honest either. Okay? Or that they're right. Including me. So anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And I hope this recorded. This is the 8th attempt to make this recording. Good day.